Hi, welcome to Thank Good It's Friday, brought to you by Conno Wines. I'm Carolyn Enting, editor of Good Magazine, and today's topic is food. We're also talking about food waste as well as ethical meat. So we've got some fantastic guests on today. We've got Tessa Vincent, who's the founder of New Zealand Food Champions 12.3. Hi, Tessa, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And we have Julie McDade, who is the Business Development Manager of Greenly Meats. Hi, Julie.
Hi there.
And we have our fantastic digital editor of Good Magazine, Hema Vara, joining us as well. Hi, Hema.
Hi.
So the idea behind these live streams is to support local businesses and to also bring people together over a Friday afternoon drink. And today we're enjoying a lovely Marlborough Pinot Noir from Conno Wines. So thank you very much, Conno, for that. Speaking of Conno and wines, we are giving away 5 $50 restaurant vouchers today. If you go to the Good Magazine website, good.net.nz/competitions, you'll find out how to enter there. And if you also want to buy some wine and with a discount, you can go to connowines.co.nz and use the code TOGETHER, and that will give you 5% off, and Conno will also donate 5% to restaurants and cafes that sell their wines, which is great to support in these weird times. And we also have 4 $100 Greenly Meats vouchers to give away today as well, which is an awesome prize giveaway. So you can also enter online at good.net.nz with those as well. So talking about food, I know myself and a lot of people, we've all spent a lot more time in the kitchen than we ever have during lockdown, and we've also spent a lot more time drinking wine. Julie, I thought we'd maybe start with you. What inspired you to found New Zealand Food Champions 12.3, and can you explain to us what that is?
Hi, yeah. So I'm Tessa, and I've got a background in law and politics. But when I left Parliament at the end of last year, did some research into the area of food waste and found that New Zealand was really lacking in terms of collaborating around this issue. So the New Zealand Food Waste Champions is a group of 12 people who are committed to halving food waste by 2030, and they represent our food supply chain. We have people from Countdown, Foodstuffs, Wastemans, the Sustainable Business Network, and some of our food rescue charities. And really, they're united by this goal of halving food waste and I guess learning from each other and joining forces across the whole food supply chain.
It's amazing. And Julie, can you tell us a bit about Greenly Meats and how that operates? Because there's a big difference between, some suppliers and producers.
Yep. Yeah. So Greenly Premier Meats is a New Zealand export meat processor. About 95% of what we produce is actually exported, and that's to about 40 countries worldwide. And 3 years ago, we set up the Greenly Butcher Shop, which is our online sales business where we distribute our own beef, Ovation lamb, and First Light venison.
That's great. I love that. When I came across First Light, I think about a year ago. I was down in the Hawke's Bay, and I was just really blown away by the fact that they were sort of certified humane standards were very, very strong on that with their animal rights ethics, and also the fact that they were doing grass-fed Wagyu beef, which was almost unheard of because people think when they think of Wagyu beef, they think of grain-fed.
Yep. Yeah, so we actually produce the Wagyu for them. So they're processed here at our Hamilton plant. And the certified humane standard that you saw, so that's actually, that's a US standard. And so they use that to promote the product within the US market. But I think it's important to realize that there's a big difference between New Zealand processors and US processors in that we have Ministry for Primary Industries veterinarians, and that's actually the job I used to do before I came to Greenly, We have vets on site 100% of the time that we're processing, and part of their remit is actually to confirm, animal welfare and humane slaughter within the plants. So it's a very highly regulated industry. And, a lot of our customer audits focus on welfare as well.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. And that's interesting that you used to be a vet.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, as you can probably tell from my accent, I trained in the States and actually worked as a horse vet. So I did clinical practice in the States for a few years before relocating to New Zealand in 2005. And then went to work for MPI, as I was saying, as an on-site vet.
It's amazing. And I think, and Tessa, were you saying you've got a bit of a legal background and so is Hema? It's quite cool finding out people's different backgrounds.
Yeah, I guess both of us united by the fact that we've done law, but not necessarily practicing law. Although in saying that, I have started a part-time charity law job, which has been really interesting. Yeah. So I worked in politics for a bit as well. I worked for the Labour Party as a researcher with the environment portfolio, which was how I kind of got interested in the space, and then moved into Minister Eugenie Sage's office for 6 months, and she manages the waste portfolio. So it was an amazing experience learning more about waste across New Zealand.
It's amazing. I'd love to know from you, Tessa, what are some practical tips for food waste in our homes, especially, when we're living in a flatting situation? How can we minimize our waste?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So I would recommend looking at Love Food Hate Waste's website. That's a really good resource. I've also noticed during the COVID-19 period that there's been some research showing that food waste behaviours at home have improved. So really simple things like planning your meals, checking your cupboards before you shop, and using your leftovers. Those are just really simple, obvious things that can actually change your habits. So I'm in a flat environment as well, and we've just recently started using KaiCycle, which is a really cool composting sort of social enterprise model. Some people come around on bikes and they pick up your bucket of food scraps from the week, and they take it to a local urban farm. And that has really been eye-opening for us, seeing kind of how much food our flat produces each week, and wanting to kind of cut back on that as well. And the benefits of sending it to compost rather than landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because when it goes into landfill, it creates gases, and a lot of people don't have a waste master or a compost. It just goes in the bin, and it's just a big problem. Tessa, I noticed on your site that for a flatting, you could maybe get a shared shelf of shared things, so you don't buy sort of everyone has their own tomato sauce. You have a sort of shared thing. Is that one of the tips there?
Yeah, my friend actually told me about that one. They do that in their flat, and I think it's a great idea because it just kind of encourages that communal living and sharing of food as well. And if you no longer want your going off yogurt, you can donate it to someone else and they might appreciate it. So yeah, that's another good tip.
I watched on your website, which is a really great resource, so everyone should go and check it out. And there was a TED talk. Now, what was the guy's name? Just trying to find it here. Tristan Stewart.
Yeah, Tristan Stewart. Yeah, he's from the UK, and I think I've got a sort of faraway crush on this guy. He's amazing, amazingly knowledgeable about food waste. And he set up an organisation in the UK called Feedback, which is basically a campaigning organisation for food waste, and also runs events. It's called Feeding the 5,000. So yeah, around 5,000 people congregate and eat food that would otherwise go to waste, and just kind of raise the profile of the issue.
What blew me away watching that talk was he got everyone watching the TED talk to say, well, when you're at home and you have a loaf of bread, who eats the crusts? And everyone put their hands up. And then he said, have you ever seen a sandwich in a shop with the crust made from the crust? And I got on thinking about what happens to the crust, and it turns out that the crust just all gets thrown away. And that just blew me away. And then he had this picture of all the crust in this massive bin, and I'm just like, oh my God, yeah, that's, you know, we do that stuff, you know, just blew me away. And speaking of events, when did New Zealand Food Champions launch? And I understand you had a big launch event in Wellington and Kona Wines was part of that as well.
Yeah, we were really lucky to have Kona Wines sponsor our launch event in March. Also lucky that it happened to be just before lockdown. So we had about 80 people at Prefab Hall in Wellington, and we had a sit-down dinner with food, 90% of which was otherwise heading for landfill. So you might think, if you're listening, that sounds disgusting, but actually the food was delicious. 3-course meal turned into this beautiful meal made by Jacob Brown, who's one of our local chefs. And we had Minister Eugenie Sage was the keynote speaker, which was really great to kind of have that government support right at the beginning for this very lofty goal of halving food waste by 2030.
Where does the food come from for that dinner? Like, is it just food from the supermarkets that they just had an expiry date on it, or?
It was actually from Kibosh, which is a local food rescue charity. So it was the food that Kibosh has that isn't quite good enough to go to their charities. So the chef went and rummaged through that and found that most of it he could turn into something creative, it was quite impressive.
God, it just blows me away. I know that you were saying during lockdown people have been more aware of their food waste, and I definitely did. I was suddenly like, oh God, if I can't get to the supermarket, all these queues, there was a 2-week wait to get food from deliveries, and I was really conscious about not wasting any food at all. And I remember thinking, you know, until we started having this food waste conversation, you know, we'd cut those florets off of broccoli and we'd cook those because they look nice and pretty, and we just throw the whole stalk in the bin, you know, and it's totally edible. You can eat that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's actually really delicious as well. Yeah.
It'd be a bit polarizing for some, but you can actually also eat a kiwi fruit without peeling the skin. You can just eat it like an apple. But a lot of people, I think they just get a bit funny about the texture, but it's really delicious.
Would be good fiber, eh?
Interesting one is chickpeas. I'm going to forget the name, but it's sort of like the gluggy part of a chickpea can. Is a substitute often for people who are vegan for eggs and so many cooking ingredients. And
fine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Great tips.
Speaking of vegan, Julie, I know there's been a big sort of, you know, a lot of people have been getting into talking about, you know, eating vegan's the way to go to save the world and all that stuff. And I guess it's interesting, during lockdown, we've noticed that just us not driving around in cars and flying around has actually had a massive effect. And maybe it's not just the farmers, you know, but there is some, you know, something to be said for maybe having meat, maybe reduced diet of meat, but still, I think, important to eat meat. I mean, I had a lovely dinner last night of lamb shanks, which I really enjoyed. And I try and maybe eat meat once or twice a week, and then the rest of the time I'm pretty much vegan. So, but I really do enjoy my meat. And I think, Tess, you were saying before we went live that you're a flexitarian, and so I guess that's what I am as well. So, Julie, sort of, what are your sort of views on, you know, when people, you know, think that vegan's the only way to go?
Caroline, I think you raised quite a number of interesting points there, and I mean, I'm a flexitarian myself, and a lot of people in our office are as well. I mean, I think people are taking a closer look at what they eat and how that affects their health and wellness. And I do believe, you know, we probably do eat too much meat in our diets. I think, you need a very balanced diet, but not to take away from meat, because it is, probably the single greatest natural source of protein, and, hugely bioavailable iron, which for women is so important, loaded with vitamins, minerals, micronutrients, so I think meat has a place in your diet, but I think when you buy meat, I think you should be really careful about what you're choosing, about, the things we've discussed around welfare, grass-fed, pasture-raised, and I think some of the pushback against meat is based on data from the US, which has very industrialized forms of animal production. I don't think anyone thinks that's right anymore, whether it's chicken or pigs crowded into cages. I mean, I just don't think people want that, and, so there's a moral and a philosophical choice about eating meat, and I totally respect. I mean, I'm a veterinarian, so, I get if you make a moral choice not to eat meat. But I think if you choose to eat meat, you need to be cautious about what you're choosing.
That's true. I mean, I was only become aware of this recently, that not all the meat that we have in New Zealand when we're buying at the supermarket necessarily comes from New Zealand. You'd assume that it would be, but for example, I think we can't keep up, we don't have enough pork or bacon in New Zealand to supply the demand. So I always make sure when I buy bacon that I get a free range one that's a New Zealand company. But I don't think a lot of people are aware of that, which I guess is really great, because with Greenly, I mean, you've just got New Zealand grown meat, haven't you?
Yeah, everything that we sell on the Greenly Butcher Shop is, New Zealand born and raised. It's all, higher welfare. It's all antibiotic, hormone, GMO free. I mean, that's some of the other things that happen overseas that we don't do here. In industrialized farming, they're using hormones to speed up production, because animals are crowded into very small environments. They're using antibiotics prophylactically, so that means before the animal gets sick, to prevent sickness, and that's very much what has led to antibiotic resistance, which is a huge challenge, globally. I mean, some predictions have said within 20 years, the antibiotics that we use now for people will no longer work. So again, you've got to make a moral and a conscious choice about the type of products that you're buying. And that certainly is very true for meat.
Yeah. I've just got a question that's come through from Gabrielle. I think this is a question for you, Tessa. She asks, why is it taking so long to introduce food bins like recycling bins? And what's the name of the organisation who picks up your food waste?
So the name of the organisation is KaiCycle. I think they are just, unfortunately, Wellington based, but I think that their model could be replicated elsewhere. And you can also look into the Urban Farmers Alliance, because there might be an urban farm near you where you can don't drop off your food waste. In terms of local council collections, yeah, I agree that should be rolled out across the country, and that we should be separating our organic waste like other countries do. In Auckland, they've been trialling that in a few regions, and they're about to, I think it's next year, roll it out, which is really exciting, and hopefully groups like ours can kind of advocate for that to happen quicker around the country.
Amazing.
Tessa, question for you. For people who want to compost at home and they may, say, live in an apartment, would you recommend, say, like a bokashi bin where it ferments the food inside the bin and then you can put it on a garden, or what are some options for people?
Yeah, I the bokashi bins are great. I would actually have a look at, there was a recent blog post on Love Food Hate Waste, which listed 12 items that you don't need a bin for to create compost, and you can directly put into your garden. So that includes things like coffee grounds. And yeah, I think there's a lot of online kind of tutorials around setting up compost, and I think the Urban Farmers Alliance have run similar tutorials, so I'd check out one of those. That's the best kind of guide for setting it up in your own home.
Fantastic. I think there's the one thing with, you know, food waste and even recycling and rubbish is that you can have a system, but if your flatmates or housemates aren't cooperative, then it can all go down the drain. So yeah.
Exactly. But I think there is something to say about prevention as well. So I really noticed when we started putting our food into a bin how much there was. And actually a lot of that might be leftovers or food that you can actually consume. So it's worth thinking about that as well.
Great. So yeah, in terms of, you know, you're seeing all these leftovers and repurposing them, what are some, do you have any easy recipes in mind that we can make? For example, it could be like a stew or
yes, it's a really good one. Another one is pizzas. I think but a lot of things can go on pizza, and you often have sort of one leftover onion or tomato that's kind of heading into the use by kind of time frame. So yeah, those are, I think a pizza night is really good and delicious as well.
I've had a question just coming from Pip on that same sort of topic. She is asking, does anyone here know of any good leftover recipe books? She's a bit over making soups. Any suggestions? Does anyone know any recipe books? Yeah.
I think I don't know of one specific like zero waste recipe book off the top of my head, but I do think that Nadia Lim has recently posted up online free recipes, and hers are quite sort of simple meals, and I know that she's quite waste conscious, and that sort of was worked into her creation of those recipes, so would recommend those.
That's great. I love your tip about the pizzas. I often will use up those tomatoes that are sort of starting to go a bit funny into when I make nachos.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine's also taught me, you know, that you can hide a lot of vegetables in nachos. So I'll add a whole broccoli into nachos, and I'll chop up the stalk as well really finely, and just hide a lot of vegetables in that way. If the spinach is starting to go a little bit off, you know, like you don't really want to have it with your eggs in the morning, but it's okay to mix them with a mix like that, and it's delicious. It really adds it to it. So yeah. That's great. And one of the tips from your TED Talk guy too, he actually planted, he used a vase of water to put a lettuce in, because it's not often food might just go off because we don't quite get to it in time. We plan to have that lovely salad on the Monday, and then we get busy, we end up going out and have impromptu dinners or get busy. And then you look at the end of the week and your lettuce is all looking sad in the bottom of the vegetable crisper, and you're like, oh no. But he put it in this vase of water, and he said it lasted an extra 2 weeks, and I just thought, what a really awesome idea.
Yeah, packaging and food waste conversations really go hand in hand. It's really hard when you're thinking, oh, I don't want to use plastic wrap to protect the meal, but then if you put it straight in the fridge, it's without any protection, it goes off quicker. So yeah, I think also putting paper towels in with spinach leaves and things makes it not go off as quick.
I didn't realize that. That's a good tip.
Coriander stalks. So I'll get the bunch of coriander, just kind of trim the stalks and then pop them in water, in a glass of water, put it in the fridge, and then if I see the stalks getting a bit droopy, I'll just replace the water. And yeah, much better than it sitting on the windowsill kind of drooping over. So
yeah.
Julie, do you have much? I mean, I know over lockdown, Greenly was run off their feet and they couldn't keep up with orders. So I'd imagine that there wouldn't be much of a food waste problem at Greenly. But when you're doing that, speaking of that, do you ever, you use all of the animal for your products?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing is wasted, and I mean, I won't go into details because people probably don't actually want to know a lot of it. But I mean, even things like we were talking about composting before, and like the paunch grass, so the contents of the rumen go off to a composting facility. So I mean, literally, there is nothing that isn't used. Whether it's for human consumption, for pet food, for pharmaceuticals, the blood is used, everything. So, it is that circular economy of, the products that there is no waste. But it's interesting, listening to Tessa, and, for us, there is that balance between plastic, so we're working on our own sustainability framework at the moment, and calculating our greenhouse gas footprint. And how do you reconcile, using plastic and preventing food waste? Obviously we have a very perishable product that can easily be contaminated and lead to food safety issues. So it's wrapped in, there's a lot of plastic. So how do you balance that? I guess, we don't know the answer, but we did go and talk to some. Just next door to us is Convex, who has invented, a compostable packaging. But one of the things they said to me was, well, you have to know your consumer, because if they don't have composting available, they just throw it in the bin, and then you've wasted money, and it's just more landfill. So hard to know.
It's great that you guys are on that journey. That's wonderful. I've just had a question come through from Tamara. She asks Tessa, she says, Tessa, I really admire that you worked with Minister Eugenie Sage as a researcher within her portfolio of waste minimisation. I watched her live webinar earlier this week in speaking about waste reduction. Throughout this webinar, they spoke of the circular economy. Question, are food suppliers implementing any procedures to minimise waste? There was also mention of a product stewardship in New Zealand. This is a long question. How do we know who is actively engaging in these processes? Do you have any recommendations of organisations who support the idea of a circular economy and product stewardship?
Yeah.
I get some of that if you...
Sounds like you're a really enthusiastic waste person around reducing waste, so really I respect that. So on product stewardship, the main company that I know that kind of looks across a whole lot of different product stewardship schemes is called 3R. But I guess the reason that we formed this coalition was that there wasn't really any coherent scheme around reducing food waste. And so I'm really pleased that we have 2 people in our coalition of 12 members from the 2 supermarkets. And those 2 women are really conscious of issues around food waste and really wanting to make a difference. One tangible way that they have is connecting with food rescue charities. So for those who don't know, food rescue charities pick up surplus food and take it to people in need. And Countdown, I think, has a connection in each of their stores with Food Rescue. And Foodstuffs has equally recently announced $1 million worth of funding to go to organisations like Kiwi Harvest and Kibosh. And there's around 20 different food rescue organisations in the country. So hopefully one in your area.
Now, speaking of rescuing food, I absolutely love that term. Such a great way to put it. I'm sure, Tessa, you've heard of the mobile app Foodprint. So that's where you can rescue food that a cafe would say otherwise chuck out because it's going off or they're closed for Monday or something. And so I believe that they've had a bit of a rehaul just because of the lockdown and helping cafes have place orders as normal. But I guess the aim of it is for you to rescue food. So you order it through the app, it's a reduced price, and then you just go and pick it up. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we love that initiative. And we've recently partnered with Foodprint around a survey that we put out, and think that it's been run by an amazing woman, and she's doing a great job. Another really cool initiative, if you're Auckland based, go check out Everybody Eats, which is a pay-as-you-feel restaurant, and they use food which otherwise would go to waste. And it's based in Onehunga and K Road, and was set up by one of our champions, Nick Losley, and is delicious food that, you can go out and support people who might not be able to afford or be able to contribute much to the meal that they have, and you can sort of pay as you feel, and contribute to the sustainability of this really unique model.
It's great that chefs are getting on board with all these wonderful initiatives, and I have actually been meaning to go and check out Everybody Eats, because I've heard so many fantastic things about it. And Julie, I know Greenly have just got a new ambassador chef on board. Can you tell us who that is and a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so we've employed Andrew Clark as our ambassador chef. So he was a former beef and lamb ambassador. He's now the executive chef at Camarosa, which is here in Hamilton. Really, really beautiful restaurant. If you're ever in the Waikato, I highly recommend it. And he has just a whole spate of awards that he's won. And he's started doing some really lovely recipes for us, which you can find on the Greenly Butcher website. Or if you place an order, you get one of our nice little recipe books. And again, we've used a lot of his recipes. He's really good at bringing out the best in meat. We were at Taste of Auckland with him back in November, and he did a venison stir fry that people just went crazy for. In fact, the venison that we took sold out the first night because people tried his dish and then immediately wanted to try it at home. So yeah, he's amazing.
I love your recipes that you do, and looking forward to trying some of his recipes, because Good Magazine, in every issue we have a lovely recipe from Greenly, and that pappardelle from the current issue is just so incredibly good.
Yeah, and we've got one of his recipes in the next issue, the beef schnitzel.
Yeah, that looks incredible.
Yeah, I actually have been wanting to try that one myself. It looks so good.
So what restaurants, Justine's sent a question through asking what gourmet restaurants use your meats?
Well, like I said before, we really focus mainly on the export market. Here in New Zealand, you can find Greenly at Farrow Fresh and Moore Wilson. And Camarosa is now using the Greenly beef and Ovation lamb and First Light venison as well.
Great. Definitely have to go to Hamilton to check it out.
Yep. Well, we can only travel domestically, so you might as well come to Hamilton.
It's true. Go and visit the gardens. Everyone's been to the Hamilton Gardens. They're definitely worth going to visit.
Coming up, so.
Tessa, what do you have to do to become a food waste champion? Can anyone be one, or do you have to sort of be an organisation?
We have 12 champions at the moment, and they are required to commit to the pledge on our website and generally be in a sustainability position or management position in a food related company or not-for-profit. We are, however, expanding from 12 to 20 champions and making those decisions next week. So I'm still taking names if the listeners are wanting to put forward anyone. But yeah, that's the main thing, is that they are an advocate for reducing food waste, and we have a lot of people who have been working, you know, in their food rescue charity for years, or working on this issue for years. So they are champions for a reason, but we are encouraging all New Zealanders to play a role. This is why I'm so passionate about the issue, is because everyone interacts with food each day. So we have a Citizens of 12.3 platform, which everyday New Zealanders can sign up to, and that's on our website. And yeah, it's a way to connect with our newsletters and any campaigns or events that we run.
It's interesting when you talk about the 12.3, because I understand that that stands for a Sustainable Development Goal Target 12.3. Can you break down that a bit more about where that target comes from?
Yeah, it is a bit of a mouthful. But the Sustainable Development Goals, so many puns when you're talking about food waste. The Sustainable Development Goals are United Nations goals that were set in 2015, and New Zealand was one of the United Nations countries who signed up to these goals. So there's 17 in total, and goal 12 relates to resource efficiency, and sitting underneath that is a goal around food waste. So that's the one that we're referring to. Essentially, it's to halve food waste by 2030 across all areas of the food supply chain. So it's an ambitious goal, but I think if we don't start acknowledging it now, then we're not going to get on that journey that a lot of other countries are already on, like the UK and even recently Australia.
It's fascinating.
And I think, you know, aside from like innovations and I guess kind of like company-led initiatives, it's also for us as individuals to think about what we do with food in the home, whether it's inviting friends over for a meal, you know they're going to turn up with something. So I like to say bring a drink rather than a plate, because you know you've got it covered, and that way you minimize waste. Or sometimes in our flat we have kind of flatmates come and go, and you just have food sitting there in the pantry forever. And I think especially with lockdown, we kind of had this kind of stockpiling mentality, but I guess in reality, if we're not going to use that, then share it around, you know, drop it off to the local community food box, or at one of the supermarket drop-off boxes, or so important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another reason I'm passionate about this issue is because climate change is such an overwhelming topic, but taking action on food waste has recently been ranked as the third best way we can combat climate change globally. Wow. So it's a really accessible way for everyone to contribute to that very big, overwhelming topic of climate change.
I would imagine that would be because, you know, if we're not throwing things away, we're not creating those gases in landfill, but also, you know, we have been producing probably 3 times the amount of food that we actually need, because supermarkets just want to have everything on the shelves looking great, and then it expires because there's only so many people that are buying it, but they want to have all that food there at all times for the customer, so they've got a choice. And meanwhile, you've got people in other countries who don't have access to food, and we're also growing all this food to make food, you know, and so it is just such a massive problem, isn't it? So from an environmental perspective, I guess that's a really good point. Yeah, that's it just blew me away then just thinking about that. So now I read on your website too something about one way of sort of reducing your waste is you can do a food audit. What would you, if someone wanted to do a food audit in their home, what would that look like?
It's pretty simple. It's just a case of maybe over a week period, just putting all of your food waste into a bucket and weighing that at the end of the week. So it's also something that just measuring your waste really makes it visually kind of compelling. and is also needed as a way to kind of track your, improvement week by week, or year by year, which is kind of a broader aim of this champions group, is for businesses to start measuring and reporting on their food waste so that we can track reductions each year and actually progress toward that goal of halving food waste.
Hey, Tessa, where is the majority within the supply chain? Where is the majority of food waste happening? Is it in the home? Because I know for us, we're the first part of the supply chain, and nothing's wasted. Everything that we produce is sent out to arrive, within its expiry date, or well within its chilled or frozen expiry date. So, but obviously something's happening along the way. So is it the home where most of it happens?
Yeah, it's difficult because we don't have the best data in New Zealand, but generally in developed countries, around a third of the food that's wasted does occur in the home. So I think that's really important to acknowledge, and kind of links back to what we've been talking about of everyone having a role to play. In saying that, though, there is waste right at the beginning, primary production, and a lot of that is influenced by later down the chain. So retail, cosmetic specifications, meaning that the potato that's been grown is too ugly apparently for us to eat, so it's dug back into the ground. So I think, it is actually across the whole food supply chain, but it's worth acknowledging that around a third is at that household level.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that, people see an ugly vegetable or fruit and they're kind of instantly off put. And I just feel like we've been really spoiled growing up to have these, perfect looking oranges and apples, where, I think that the uglier, the nicer tasting. So
yeah, well, that's great. I think you should definitely join our Citizens of 12.3 then and start a campaign around ugly vegetables. We would love that.
There's now that the odd bunch, like the carrots, the ugly carrots in a bag.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Julie, sorry for not asking you many questions. It is because I'm a vegetarian, so I'm not that great with meat. But my partner does eat a lot of meat, and he actually loves it when we go out for dinner, because he always orders the biggest steak because he doesn't get to eat a lot around me. So I was looking on your website and I saw that you have a really cool idea. It's called like the build your own box. So you can kind of pick and mix what you like. And I had a wee laugh because I saw you had the "my kids will only eat to mince" box as well on your website.
Yeah, that was actually my creation, because my son, who's 10, so when we started the butcher shop, I was like, right, we're going to have a box with just mince, because I know there have to be other mums like me whose the kids will only eat mince. And so, we've done that. And it's actually, mince is probably the most popular product on the website. And certainly the build your own box, just appeals because people want, just to have a variety of beef and lamb and venison and different cuts and diced or stir fry. And what was interesting about lockdown is we saw people really experimenting with food. I mean, we have 23 different cuts of beef, and we had, people ordering ossobuco and oxtail and things that generally don't sell that well. And I think it's because they were home and they wanted to experiment with new recipes. So that was quite interesting to see. Yeah.
I noticed on your website, Julie, that two of your most frequently asked questions were, where does your lamb come from? Where does your beef come from? Can you sort of tell us about that?
Yeah, so the beef, it is our own beef. So we have, like I said, two plants here in the Waikato. And so everything is sourced from the Upper North Island. And all of our lamb is from Ovation. So Ovation is based in the Hawke's Bay, but they have a number of premises, and the lamb that we source actually comes from their Tikawiti, so just down the road.
That's great. And all grass fed, of course.
Oh yes, all grass fed, all pasture raised. Yeah, there's actually very very little feedlotting in New Zealand. There's just one that I know of, and that's not us.
Yeah, I was blown away actually. I just thought there wasn't any grain fed in New Zealand, so I was quite surprised to hear that there was one in New Zealand.
Yeah, there is, and it's raised for a specific market, and it's an export market, and that's just because there's a preference in that market for grain fed beef.
Well, that's interesting, because I have spoken to a few dietitians, and of course I need to talk to them to get the right, the exact information on this. But it was my understanding that when they did a lot of studies in the States on people potentially having health problems through potentially eating too much meat, and looking at heart attacks, it was pretty much all grain-fed meat, so it's not very fatty meat.
Yep.
And in fact, the lean meat and the grass-fed, you've got a lot more nutrients. It's a much leaner, healthier meat, and those statistics don't apply to New Zealand beef. And I guess that's also why there's such a great export. People are wanting to have the grass-fed beef, and there's such a demand for New Zealand meat, isn't there?
Yeah, it's certainly one of the largest growing categories in the States for meat is grass-fed, because people are starting to understand the differences, not just nutritionally. So grass-fed meat is lower in saturated fats, and it has a different fatty acid profile. So the fatty acids are your good fats, totally different, and much leaner, much better for you. And then of course there's the animal side of it as well, in that we feel like pasture raised is the natural way. That's the way Mother Nature intended cattle to roam and eat grass. Cattle aren't actually meant to eat grain, and they can actually get sick from grain. They get something called rumen acidosis. So it's on so many levels, grass-fed to me is the right way, to eat meat if you choose to eat meat.
Do you think there's a way in New Zealand in the future, where I know some people want to do home kills, and they've got their small farmers, and because there's something to be said for an animal, sort of being eating their grass happily in their paddock, and then next minute, like, it's kind of gone. But instead of putting it on a truck and sort of transporting it somewhere and making the animal becomes quite anxious. And
I think we ensure that animals are not trucked long distances. Like I said, we just source cattle from the upper North Island. We never bring animals across the Cook Strait. And we have done, as an industry, significant research into cortisol levels, so that's your stress hormone. And generally speaking, they're not that stressed, because it is just a short distance that they're traveling, and they're with other animals, so they're feeling pretty happy.
Oh, that's good. Oh, amazing. So yeah, I just think, I don't know, I'd love to have some. What are sort of like your tips for the best tips for cooking meat? Like in terms of, I've had, in the past, when back in the early days of my life, I was fed up with some pretty overdone lamb chops. Where they were cooked to a point of oblivion, and they were just so tough to eat. Things like that. We've learned a lot in recent times about how to actually cook meat well, but are there some sort of fail-safe tips you can offer about preparing and cooking meat?
Yeah, well, certainly with venison, you do not want to overcook venison, because it is of those three meats, it is the leanest of the three. So, I prefer all of my meat to be medium rare. It's personal preference, but if you like medium rare, basically get your barbecue to 300 degrees, and if you have sort of a normal thickness of steak, it's 3 minutes each side with the lid down, and then you have to let it rest. Chefs will tell us you have to let it rest, and that's very true. And then that's, I guess, my tips for the perfect steak.
So resting for like 5 minutes, or?
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, bring it in and cover it with foil and then a tea towel, so it stays warm. And then that allows all the juices to be reabsorbed into the meat, to get a nice juicy steak every time.
Nice. Well, I have to say, red wine certainly is a very nice accompaniment with a good steak.
I know you've sent us a lovely red. Thank you.
Yeah, this is lovely. It's sort of like got layers of cherry and plum and sort of some floral notes. It's really very nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Very smooth.
So what's for dinner tonight? What are we all cooking, or are we going out?
Oh, my son wants burger fuel tonight. So.
Delicious.
Yeah, I'm having a dinner out with friends, which is really exciting because I haven't seen, a lot of them in a while. So I believe we're allowed to do that now, and
it's more than 10.
I know, it's been really cool to see, that so many restaurants are booked out. You can't even, get a booking till next weekend. So that's been pretty cool as well to support the local industry.
Yeah, that was the best thing about level 3 was getting gourmet takeaway. And I went straight to Camarosa, so our ambassador chef restaurant, to get my gourmet takeaway, and it was just beautiful.
Oh, lovely. It's so cool to see all the innovative ways that cafes and restaurants still continue to trade as well during level 3. That was, pretty impressive. So.
Made it my mission to support as many Wellington restaurants as I can while I'm down here this week. So I checked out a lovely new restaurant today called High Water. And they had this lovely pasta dish with, slow cooked tomatoes and some pork in there, but all sort of shredded up, and it was absolutely delicious. And so it's been great being out and about again. As you say, Tessa, it's just so exciting. And if you're socially distanced at the table, you're a few meters from everyone, and we've got to sign into all the restaurants, and you've got your little QR codes. And but I've been carrying a pen around with me as well, because a lot of the restaurants have a pen, and you kind of don't want to touch the pen when you come in. And I don't know what happened. I downloaded the QR app for the government one, and for some reason now a lot of the ones in restaurants aren't compatible with that one, and so it doesn't work. And maybe it's just me being a technophobe, I don't know. So I've been using the pen quite a lot in Wellington, but it's great.
Yeah, you'll have to. Everyone should come here in August when we have Wellington on a plate, and a burger competition around all the restaurants here, and it's just amazing.
That's great. Would you do an event with New Zealand Food Waste Champions as part of that festival?
We might now. I mean, to be honest, I hadn't anticipated August being open, but everything's going smoothly in New Zealand. So might look into that and potentially run something similar to our launch event.
I think it would be real. I'd be interested in something like that. It's something a bit different. I know part of Wellington on a Plate, they also had a dinner in a prison at one point, 1 year.
Yeah, they have some really cool events. And actually, Kibosh Food Rescue does kind of tend to do a food waste type event where they, use food that you might not normally use, and the ticket price goes towards Kibosh.
That's awesome.
It would be so cool to try Burger Wellington, but a burger made from like rescue food. That would be amazing.
You're inspiring me. I'll go talk to the coordinators next week.
That's actually a good idea, Hema. They could do the whole Burger Wellington, and the burgers have to be made with rescued food.
Delicious. I think Wellington, you guys have some great events. You also have Toast Martinborough a little bit further up north, and I love the community down there. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is good to be back here.
Yeah.
It's definitely a foodie paradise.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wandering around all my old haunts because I'm originally from Wellington, so I always love coming back home. And so I've been eating out quite a lot, actually. I brought some food down with me, but my partner's here so he can eat it all. Don't worry, we won't waste any. Julie, do you have any food waste or storage tips for meat in the home? Obviously, because I think that, cold meat in the next day is also equally delicious. But can you freeze meat once it's been cooked?
I don't know if I would freeze it after I cook it, but certainly, most retail meat is vacuum packed. So chilled vacuum packed red meat has a very long shelf life. So it's, perfectly happy in your refrigerator. We do look at things like temperature abuse. So if your refrigerator is constantly being open and closed, if you have a big family, lots of kids, the temperature can fluctuate. So that will have an effect on the shelf life. But, if you're not going to eat it in a week, just stick it in the freezer, and then thaw it out slowly, in the fridge, and it'll be beautiful. It won't have any effect on the quality or the tenderness. So, yeah, I think it's just keeping an eye on what's in your fridge, and like Tessa said, I mean, for me, I used to just go to the supermarket and just throw a bunch of stuff in the trolley and take it home. And now every weekend I plan my meals and just am very dedicated to just buying what's on my list. And now I hardly throw anything away.
That's great. We've had a question come through asking, what is our favourite restaurant in Auckland and why?
That's a good one. I love Cotto, just for the Italian food, and they always do amazing vegetarian meals. There's also Amano, I guess, and there's actually, I've been meaning to try Lillian in Grey Lynn, but that seems to be booked out for days, so I'll keep trying.
Those are definitely good recommendations. I love Soul Bar and Bistro. They've been a steadfast, wonderful restaurant for a long time, and they've got fantastic vegetarian meals as well as lovely meat meals and fish meals, and their goddess salad is incredible. If you just want to go there and eat that and just be very healthy, that'll fill you up completely. But God, there's so many great restaurants in Auckland. It's hard to put on the spot and think of just one. I mean, Tessa and Julie, have you got any that you particularly love that you've checked out?
Oh, I love Ebisu. I don't know if you guys have tried Ebisu. That's lovely. And I'm totally blanking on the name, but just above is Josh Emmett's, and we did it. Yeah, we did an event there with him, and that, oh my gosh, that was amazing, and beautiful view of the water from his second level. Yeah.
We're definitely spoiled for choice in Auckland. Well, everywhere in New Zealand, really. We're just so lucky with, abundance of food and, amazing chefs and things. So, but I just realised we are running out of time. So, my goodness, I just wanted to remind anyone, if they did want to go in the draw to win the 4 $100 Greenlee vouchers, to go to good.net.nz and sign up for that. And we've also got three restaurant vouchers from Connor Wines. Sorry, I got that wrong before. You can also go to our website to find out about that as well. And yeah, I'd definitely suggest going and trying out this lovely Pinot Noir. It's very, very nice. So it's been absolutely incredible having you guys on the show today. I guess we can call it a show. It's a live stream, but it feels like a show. We've been doing this now for 5 weeks, and it's been so great to be able to chat to people around the country, to take questions from viewers, and to support local businesses and to learn more about what's happening out there in our cities and in our country. So really value your time, and thank you so much for coming on board. And so I thought there's another question coming through, but it's telling me my time is up. So I wanted to say cheers, everyone. Have a wonderful Friday, and I'll see you here next week. Cheers.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me.